of the name of the Rebbe Cashapp and the instruction it has for all of us about connecting the spiritual and the physical. And next segment of Farbrengen, the Rebbe discusses the date of Shabbos. Shabbos, the year the Rebbe gave it Farbrengen 1982, as this year, was on the third day of Nisan. Now, from the first day of Nisan and on, it's customary to add a section of the Torah that after davening we read the nasi. We read about the offerings that were given by all the princes, the Jewish people, leaders of each tribe, to inaugurate the tabernacle. Each leader brought a sacrifice on the first 12 days of Nisan, and we recite the paragraph in the Torah that is associated with the leader of that day, that brought a sacrifice that day. So on the first day of Nisan, we're reading the tribe of Yehuda, and the second day of Nisan, we're reading the tribe of Yisachar, and the third day of Nisan, which is Shabbos, we read the tribe of Zevulun. So the question is like this: the relationship between Zevulun and Shabbos seems very strange, because the whole idea of Zevulun, the tribe of Zevulun, is that they were known to be merchants, they were known to do business. That means that Zvulun is about going out into the world and being involved with things in this world. And that's the relationship between Zvulun and the third day of Nisan, because the third day of creation, number 3 in general, is associated with the union of the mundane to the holy. The number 3, other places in the chassidus talks about how the number 1 underscores the truth of Hashem, how Hashem is before there's any existence, or how Hashem is higher than existence. Number 2 is the source of plurality, multiplicity, and fragmentation. Just as in day 1 in creation, all there was Him. Hashem was alone in the world. Number 2 in creation, Hashem made the tzimtzum and the rakia and separation between the upper waters and lower waters, creating separation. And number 3, Hashem gathered the waters together to make it possible for there to be man. And what man does is that he creates a bond between the higher and the lower. So number 3 is associated with Zvulun, because the businessmen, that's what they do. They're about connecting the mundane to the holy. They go out to do business, they get involved with the world. And that's the idea of number 3. But therefore, it would make sense for the reading of the tribe of Zvulun about their gift. It would make sense that their gift would be associated with the days of the week, because only during the week can you be involved in business. And by doing business, you can make a lot of money and give a lot of tzedakah. Give 10% or more than even a fifth of your earnings, as it says in Tanya, that for certain reasons you're allowed to give even more than a fifth to charity. Like, let's say you want to bring atonement to your soul, just like you would give a lot of money, shalom, for doctor bills, even more than a fifth. So too, if you want to rectify past mistakes to giving tzedakah, you ought to give more than a fifth, as it says over there in Tanya. But that's what Zvulun is about. Zvulun is about making money and giving money, but Shabbos is associated, it would seem, more with Yisachar. Yisachar was the tribe who were all Torah scholars. And Shabbos is associated with Torah. As the Gemara says, that the Torah was given on Shabbos, and the service of Hashem on Shabbos is all about, seems about Torah, about Yisachar. So if the second day of Nisan fell on Shabbos, that would make perfect sense. So, and yet, the second day of Nisan we read on Friday, and the third day of Nisan, the tribe of Zvulun, that's when we read on Shabbos. It says also that the reason why Yisachar was chosen to give his gift to the inauguration of the temple on the second day of Nisan is because the prince of the tribe, Nisan Mansur, he was the one who advised everybody that they should do this. He was the one who said, hey, we should all give a gift in honor of inauguration of the temple. Let's do this. So because it was his idea, that's why he merited to to go number 2 in the order of all the princes of the tribe. Why was it that the Solomon Mansur had this idea? It's because he was the Torah scholar. His tribe is a tribe of Torah scholars. And that's why they had this great idea, because they know how things are supposed to get done, because they study the Torah. So the question therefore is, how can we read on Shabbos about Zvulun, and not only that, but after we finish reading the Nasi, we read the paragraph about the gift of the tribe, we then recite a prayer. And the prayer we recite is, may all of the light and all of the holiness of this tribe shine into me, and make this cause me to go in the ways of Zvulun. So why are you asking about Zvulun, which seems to be asking about success in business and doing business in a way that Torah wants to do business? Why is that the request you would make on Shabbos? That's the question we have. Explanations like this. But let's first preface the following. The whole idea of Zvulun, of elevating the things in this world, is something that's only temporary. It's not something eternal. The whole point of Zvulun is to make the world a home for Hashem. Hashem wants a home in the lower realms. That means that the whole existence of the lower realms, and the whole point of elevating the lower realms, isn't only in order that Hashem should have a home in the lower realms. Why did Hashem create the world? He wants a home in the world. So once the world becomes a home for Hashem, there's no need to elevate the lower realms, because they've been elevated already. So the whole idea of Zvulun is a temporary thing. The whole idea of the need to elevate the physical and the material and the mundane is a temporary thing. It's similar to the idea of what a letter represents. The difference between a letter and a book, as it says in the discourses about Purim, where it discusses the Megillah as being called a letter, and the Torah is called a book. Torah is called a book, and the Megillah is called a letter. A book, says the Alter Rebbe in that discourse, is something eternal, but a letter is only written for a temporary purpose. It's not meant to last. Once you read the letter, you don't need it anymore, because the idea of a letter is only to know something that you need to know right now. So, in the Alter Rebbe's letters, which is the 4th section of the Tanya, the 4th section of the Bible of Hasidic philosophy, in the very beginning, he talks about the special advantage that businessmen have on Shabbos. And that's why he writes this in his holy letters, because again, a letter is a temporary thing, and therefore it is the appropriate place to discuss the temporary nature of the spiritual role of the tribe of Zvulun, which is about elevating the physical. So what does he say about the tribe of Zvulun? Why are they especially connected to Shabbos? Why do businessmen have a special event on Shabbos? So he says like this. It says that during the week, businessmen don't have as much time to daven. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe says, if you need to choose a chazan during the week, you don't want to choose a businessman because he has to rush to work. Rather, choose a school teacher, choose someone who is choose someone who his father-in-law is paying for him to study Torah all day. They could daven for an hour and a half at least. That's the guys you want to choose to be a chazan. And that person should use as his minion people who are also Torah scholars who could daven with the same length. And the Alter Rebbe says that the businessmen, they were feeling slighted because they couldn't stay for Baruch Hu or for Kedusha because they had to rush to work, and the lengthy the chas and taking so long made it impossible for them to participate. So the Alter Rebbe says they shouldn't disturb. Only those businessmen who have time to daven could be chazanim, but otherwise leave that position for those who have time. And they do this. The chazan prays for everyone, and even if you're not there, it affects the whole community. If you're not able to make it, it says in Gemara, people were in the fields, were not able to make it. So they also receive something from the fact that there is someone davening, although they're not physically there. So if you can't be there, great, don't be there, but don't daven fast in order to just to be able to do Kedusha and Baruch Hu, and then shorten the davening, and therefore Chashapp shortening life, because that's in Gemara, that what makes a person have a long life? Davening for a long time. So if you add that to your biological scale over there.
Yeah, I am figuring that in right now.
So
I don't think it has to do with blindness, though.
Chashapp. So then the Alter says, so that's during the week. However, on Shabbos and Yontif, when the businessmen do have time, and they are able to put their heart and souls in their prayers, because they have no hindrance to their prayers. Says the Alter Rebbe, on Shabbos and Yontif, they have a greater obligation to be the chazanim, to lead the community on Shabbos. So this informs us of the great virtue that businessmen have on Shabbos, that not only are they able to pray as long as the Torah scholars do during the week, but the Alter Rebbe says they have a greater obligation. They have a greater obligation to daven at length on Shabbos. Why do they have a greater obligation? So, in this letter of the Alter Rebbe, most letters of the Alter Rebbe are about giving tzedakah in Tanya, and most of the letters describing the greatness of businessmen is about the greatness in their giving tzedakah. But this letter, he unusually discusses the greatness they have on Shabbos in their davening. What indeed is the greatness they have in davening he explains in Torah or in Parshas Truma. It says like this in Torah. I will find you on the outside. I will lead you and bring you to my mother's. It's a verse from Song of Songs. I will lead you and bring you to my mother's house. I will give you to drink from the fragrant wine, from the I think it says from the juice of the pomegranates. That's what the verse says. I'll find you on the outside. I will. Says out there, who is the one who finds Hashem on the outside? This refers to businessmen, because their whole service of Hashem is on the outside. It's about elevating the physical world. I will lead you and bring you to my mother's house refers to Torah study. A businessman has to also study Torah. Although their main service of Hashem is in action, nevertheless, also as out there in Torah order, that Hashem creates the world in a similar way that a human being is created, that there's thought, speech, and action in a human being, and so to the world, in order to bring the divine energy to the world, has to first come through thought and speech, then can come to action. So therefore, there first has to be Torah study to bring the divine energy to the world. And therefore, businessmen, their main thing is action, yes, but they also have to set time to study Torah. And concerning their Torah study, it says, the pasuk continues and says, I will find you on the outside and I will kiss you. And it says the Alter Rebbe, the main idea of the bond with Hashem through a kiss is through study of Torah. Not only do businessmen have an obligation to study Torah, but the Alter Rebbe says that businessmen have a much greater value in their Torah study. That doesn't quote this here, but there in Torah Orah, the Alter Rebbe says that a kiss is something that you give someone when you can't express your love in words. So much, it's such a great expression of love that you're just not able to contain it in your words. And so the Alter Rebbe says there is a great pleasure that Hashem has specifically from a businessman studying Torah, and that causes Hashem to have, so to speak, to show His love with a kiss. Their Torah study specifically is called a kiss. Why? So it says later on over there in that discourse, because the businessmen, they have the fragrant wine. The fragrant wine means that there's something in the wine that's spicy. The idea of spiciness means that there's some friction in their Torah study. There's fragrance. On the one hand, fragrance means something which is not internalized and not something you eat and goes inside you. It's just a fragrance. It's an aura. In a similar way, the Alter Rebbe says when a businessman pushes aside his nature and his desire to to do whatever he wants to do in business or whatever else it is, and he sets a time to study Torah, the Alter Rebbe says it causes such a unique pleasure to Hashem that Hashem's only response to this could be a kiss. It can't be anything else. So that kiss is represented by a fragrance, because a fragrance is also something which is like an aura. It's something which is transcendent, something which is infinite. There in that discourse, the Alter Rebbe says that a Torah scholar, his study of Torah is more like drinking milk, something which is eternalized, something which has a vessel, something which. But a businessman studying Torah, he says his study of Torah is similar to a fragrant wine, where the wine has a fragrance because it has something spicy in it. The spiciness is the guy has to contend with the friction of he has to resist his urge to go back to his business and other things in order to maintain that set time he set aside to study Torah. And then the Alter Rebbe says the same applies to the mitzvahs of the Jewish people. Those people are unable to study Torah, and they can't set time to study Torah because they don't know how to study Torah. It says further in that verse in Song of Songs, I will give you to the juice of the pomegranate. So what does that mean? That the pomegranate represents the Jewish people who are empty of Torah, and they're full of mitzvahs. Although they're empty of Torah, the many seeds in the pomegranate represent the many mitzvahs that even the Jews who are empty of Torah are full of. So these people who are unable to study Torah, and yet they are full of mitzvahs and full of good character, that also causes a unique pleasure of Hashem. And that's also connected to this idea of this fragrance and this unique pleasure Hashem has, which is transcendent. So now we can understand the great virtue the businessmen have in their Torah, in their prayer, and their mitzvahs, and the world stands on these three pillars: Torah, prayer, and mitzvahs. Not just the world stands on this, but also the small world. That is man. Everything stands on this. I mean, your personal world and the world at large stands on these three pillars. So they have an advantage in their mitzvahs, in their Torah, and in their prayers. So although the Alter Rebbe in Tanya and Geras HaKodesh, unlike in Torah Or, where he speaks about the virtue of businessmen and their mitzvahs and their Torah study, but in Tanya he only speaks about their virtue in this letter that we're referring to, only speaks about the value that they have in their prayers. But that's because the main service of Hashem on Shabbos is davening. The Gemara even says it was with difficulty that Torah study was permitted on Shabbos, but the main service of Hashem on Shabbos is davening. So therefore, it is under L'chaim. Okay, there is a unique quality of businessmen's mitzvahs and Torah study on Shabbos too. They have more time, they could study more Torah, they could do more mitzvahs. That's true. But the reason why the Alter Rebbe speaks about prayer specifically is because that's the main service of Hashem on Shabbos. And the Alter Rebbe says this in Parshas Truma. Why in Parshas Truma? Because Parshas Truma is about giving a gift to Hashem from your silver and gold. And the other 13 or 15 things that are Torah mentions which are used to inaugurate the temple. So there's two translations of the word Truma. Truma means to separate, and Truma means to be elevated. So that's the idea of a businessman. A businessman has to elevate the silver and gold in his possession to holiness. And so therefore, the Alter Rebbe discusses the greatness of a businessman in Parshas Truma, because that's their parsha. That's a parsha about giving donations. That's what they're uniquely gifted to do. And this is especially emphasized also on Shabbos, because Shabbos we are lifted above all things in this world. And not only are we trying to lift up the world, but we ourselves are lifted above the world, and we're involved only in holy things on Shabbos. So it's not wondrous, it's not surprising that this Shabbos we read about Zvulun, because specifically on Shabbos we see the great virtue of businessmen. Elsewhere the Alter Rebbe says the reason why businessmen is able to daven more than a Torah scholar, specifically because of his involvement in all kinds of worries and obsessions and stuff which are even unhealthy. But nevertheless, when he's able to tear himself away and daven, there is a unique yearning he has in his davening that makes his davening more sincere and more heartfelt. Of course, if he doesn't, okay, fine, moving on. So, what's the whole service of Hashem, of Zvulun? How is it described in the Torah? The Torah describes Zvulun as rejoice, Zvulun, in your going out. The Torah describes Zvulun as a guy who goes out to do business, about elevating the physical world. So the question is, why should he go out with joy? Zvulun should rejoice when he goes out to do business. You could do business in many ways, but how can you go out to business when, with joy, you don't know how the business is going to end? You're going out to business, you don't know if you're going to make money or not. As the Torah says, how when you're just making the first move, how are you supposed to celebrate as if you have it already? And yet the Torah, which is the Torah of truth and the Torah of life, says Zvulun should rejoice when he goes out. Because, you hear Zev, you're listening. Why should Zvulun go out and rejoice when he goes out? He's going out, doesn't know what's going to happen. Because Zvulun is going on the shlichus of Hashem. He's doing the mission of Hashem. Therefore, he's certainly going to be successful in this mission. And therefore, even his very first out, he goes with incredible joy. It means that even though a Jew knows that he's not able to be successful in business with his own power and his own might, he's going with the power of Hashem. But it's possible to go out to business and not think about why you're going. You're not thinking about, I'm going because I need to give stock and they do something good with this. You could do business and not realize, you may feel Hashem is in charge, but you may not feel you're doing something valuable. You may feel like what I'm doing is actually like, it's like worthless. It's like empty. It's like when you eat. You may eat not because you're hungry specifically, but you're not eating for the sake of Hashem either. You could eat not for the sake of Hashem, and just you're eating. There's no magic in the moment. You don't feel like, the Arizal says that today instead of there being sacrifices, we have our table, and my eating for the sake of Hashem is like bring a sacrifice to Hashem. That could happen, and today it's not. Today you're just eating because you're eating. Today you're doing business because you're doing business. You're not thinking about, wow, I have a mission from Hashem. So you're just eating because you want to be healthy. And it's not wild, it's not something unusual, because Hashem created a person in a way that if a person does not eat and drink, he comes hungry, comes thirsty. And the nature of your body is to go and draw you to eat and drink. That means that although you're a human being, and not just a human being, you're called an Adam, and the word Adam means similar to Hashem. Hashem made this nature in a human being that he wants to eat and drink. And that's the nature of the body of a Jew. And this is also the nature of Gentiles, because what happens in the Jewish world continues on and goes throughout the world. But nevertheless, when you eat and drink just because of your health, that's not the way it's supposed to be. And it needs to be fixed. As it says in Tanya, when you eat and drink, it has to be for the sake of Hashem. And so too when you do business. You do business for the sake of Hashem. You shouldn't just do business, you don't think about the purpose. Rather, you have to do business with a sense you're going to the mission of Hashem. And when you go out to business with this thought and emphasizing, I'm doing the mission of Hashem, then you're certain you'll be successful in fulfilling the mission of Hashem. And that's why you go out to work with joy. Go out to joy with happiness, because you know why you're going. This is so important. This is an important message. We're going to see how this connects to the Shabbos. This is a not Shabbos part of Zvulun, but Mitchell will see how this has to do with Shabbos as well. So in short, what we learned today is that Zvulun is uniquely connected to Shabbos because Zvulun is able to daven more on Shabbos than he can during the week, and therefore he also has more time to study Torah and more time to do mitzvahs.
The Yitzhak on Shabbos for davening is so much stronger. I don't know, all week long I have no problem davening, time, and everything. Comes Shabbos.
The Alter says we just learned that the main mitzvah on Shabbos is davening. That's the main mitzvah of Shabbos.
That's what I said. That's why it's called this.
And that's why this Shabbos we read Zvulun. Why do we read Zvulun? Because Zvulun uniquely is able to daven on Shabbos, and therefore this is a time to read the Nasi of Zvulun. But I just want to say the last line about we just learned the last point, that the Torah says Zvulun should rejoice in going out to business. Why should you rejoice? You should rejoice because you should realize the incredible mission that you have, the value of what you're doing. I mean, our body draws us to eat and drink. But Rebbe says, but think about the magic of what's going on. This is what Hashem wants you to do. Same as also when you go out to business. Think about the magic of this. Hashem is sending you on this mission. Therefore, you go with absolute certainty you're going to be successful. L'chaim.